Kirby Smart says they have the top 3 offensive line in the country. Man, stop playing, Kirby. You know y'all number one.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into our Atlanta Football Party, the Dogs edition. It's your home for the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra, Batiste, and joining me is Jarvis Davis. Our Atlanta Football Party is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, don't sleep, JD. Don't sleep on these dogs on the hardwood. And is there a sleeper who could dominate for the Dogs on the football field this upcoming season? And speaking of dominate, that's exactly what Kirby Smart wants to do. But what does that look like? Let's get into it. Either we're maybe a little weaker on the defensive line or we're really good on the offensive line. That's a direct quote from Kirby Smart to ESPN's Chris Lowe. And Kirby went on to say, the glaring thing I've seen at practices is that the offensive line has done a really good job. I don't know that we're going to be great this year, although we got a follow-up to that one, but I think we have a chance to be great on offense. So first things first, Jarvis, is this feedback from Kirby more to encourage the O-line, more of an indictment of the D-line, more of a tool for motivation for both of them, or all of the above?
I think it's more so it's all of the above, because when you think about Kirby Smart, because he's a straight shooter. One thing that and guys appreciate that, right? Because you understand like all of the accolades and all the recognition that defensive line got when they had Devontae Wyatt, Jalen Carter, and Jordan Davis, and and Trevon Walker being drafted #1 overall when nobody really saw that coming until a couple of days before the draft actually started. So when you think about all that recognition that they got, and all the pumping of the chest that went on with Kirby and the defensive line coach, so you just got to think about, okay, now that it's waves of this thing, because when we know how he recruits and how he loves size on the offensive side of the football, so he has to give those guys credit. And to be honest with you, when you think about all of those guys that they have coming back with Xavier Truss, Micah Morris, Dylan Fairchild, Tate Ratledge, and only got it in Earnest Greene as well at their left tackle spot. I named more than 5 guys.
Right.
And then you have Jared Wilson, who's going to step in at the center spot, who said, and Brand Granger said that, hey, he's going to be better than me. You just think about all that experience you have. You have to look at these guys and say, you know what? This is one of the best offensive line in the entire nation. And Kirby understands that, and you have to give those guys a credit. Now, as far as the defensive line goes, it's a challenge. This is a challenge to say, hey, fellas, I'm a defensive coordinator at heart, and I'm a safety at heart as well, because I always remember back to how I used to joke with one of my best friends, and one of my college teammates played safety, and he always look at us and like, hey man, these guys got a lot of time back here. He got a lot of time to throw that football, so I need y'all guys to go ahead and get home, and that's kind of how I look at this situation, right? With Kirby, hey, we weren't one of the best second teams in the nation last year. We got to be better in that spot. And I'm challenging you guys to kind of up your game, because the offensive line, they coming. They already done proved themselves. And it's all about them getting better and being number 1 offensive line in the nation. And I think that it's a challenge from Kirby. And I'm not surprised that he's doing it, because this is the time that you get better. This is the time you start working on your skill sets and understanding what you need to work on. Because once summertime comes, it ain't no, hey, I'm working on my dip and rip, and I'm working on trying to get to the quarterback. Nah, it's gonna be too late for it then. You're gonna get passed by. And I think that he's kind of sending a message saying, hey, I love my offensive line, and we're gonna be one of the best in the country, hands down. But man, my defensive line got to get better. Y'all gotta produce more.
And you think about the fact that G-Day is a week and a half away. So like you said, there's no opportunity during the summer to perfect your craft. Really and truly, the eyes are going to be on you at least for a couple of snaps, right? The eyes are going to be on you next Saturday in Athens to see exactly where you are. And you know how this works. Like you said, a Warren Brinson is coming back. A Zion Logue is coming back. And you already know, I'm about to say your guys entering the chat, Michael Williams. Yes. So there are a bunch of those guys coming back. Nazir Stackhouse that you really want to see step up to the plate and evolve their game. So I agree with you. I think it's kind of an all of the above comment where, yes, it was to give some high praise to an O-line that has to follow what was arguably the best O-line in the country. I know Michigan got the honor for it, but many would actually argue that Georgia's was better, but at least top two last year. Now you're coming in to kind of replace them. Well, D-line, you got to step up to the plate as well. And you guys have to show, you showed flashes, many of you, most of you last year, but now flashes have to turn into a consistent showing that you can be dominant inside the trenches, because that's essentially, like you said, what a defensive-minded coach is looking for. He wants to be able to say his quarterback is standing upright at all times, Carson Beck, and when Carson Beck's competitor or opponent is on the field, he wants to make sure he sees that guy with a dirty jersey each and every time he can. But you also alluded to something that we just got a little bit more insight on, right? Because you mentioned that obviously the Dogs want to be in that top echelon, that upper echelon for both lines. But particularly, Kirby said today, took it a step further. He's, of course, in the midst of his last press conference ahead of G-Day. He feels like this O-line, Jarvis, might just be top 3 in the country. You agree?
Oh yeah, hands down. I say 1. And Kirby feels that way. He feels like he got the
Of
best.
course, yes.
He was like,
and that might have been motivation too. He might have
Right.
been saying top 3 because he's like, so you want to be number 1 or what?
Y'all ain't all that.
Yeah.
And that's being the straight shooter that he is, because
Sure.
obviously, he's working with these guys and being around these guys every day. He understands the little fine nuances that they need to work on. As a group, yeah. Oh, number 1. But hey, Earnest Greene, you want to be one of those, the next left tackle to go get drafted in the first round? Here's what you need to do. And I think that's what Kirby's doing by each and every player. Micah Morris, do you want to not rotate with Dylan Fairchild anymore? How about this?
Right.
Here's what you need to do. It's just all those. And Jared Wilson, you want to be able to fill in for one of the best centers that ever come through Georgia, ever. As far as from a leadership standpoint, here's what you need to do. And you're just going right down the line. Tate Ratledge, you're a 3-year starter. You want to be drafted as a guard in the first round, and prove to people that you're that NFL prospect. Yeah, this is what you need to do. So I think that for him to be able to throw that out there, and because we cover this team on a daily basis. We understand like they're one of the best in the country, if not the best. But for him to kind of say top 3, and you already know what Kirby coming from on that. He's like, hey man, I got the game plan for how y'all can get even better.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that we're accustomed to seeing. And these guys have the blueprint in terms of, and you know this, because you guys call yourselves Ramuley, which is basically your Rams family for Albany State. But even within the core of your, exactly, for life, even within the core of your football team, I know that you probably had those conversations with those guys who were coming behind you because you guys set a standard. You guys won a championship, right? So you set a standard and, let it be known, hey, this is what I did when I was in school. Here's what the expectation is. So going back to what you said about Amarius Mims, Cedric Van Pran Granger, hey, we set the standard. We were a part of championship runs. And so the expectation is that, you get us back there. And speaking of that, Jarvis, that speaks to like that, go ahead. Yeah.
I thought you made an excellent point. That each one teach one, it is so efficient. It kind of minimizes what the coaches have to do, because when you have guys who come through that program and bought in and have had success, and they're sitting there looking back like, hey man, this is what I did. Here's what you can do. And those guys are reaching down and saying, you know what, freshman, or whatever, Joseph Jonah, Janye, hey man, this is what you need to do. And if you want to be one of the Devontae Wyatt or Jordan Davis, those guys are reaching down saying, hey, this is how we do things here, and this is what you need to do if you want to follow along in that path. And I think that helps the coaches out a lot. And talking about establishing culture, because Lord knows, like my defensive coordinator in college, by the time I became a senior, he was just like, all right, man, y'all go do y'all thing. It was just because we knew it front and back, and everybody that came up along from freshman on up, they understood the assignment as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting, the culture, because I was just, of course, having a conversation with my nephew before the show, FaceTiming with him. And now as a rising junior, the DBs, they get together and they have their little sleepovers. And the whole goal is for them to start bonding and gelling. They meet with the DB's coach offline. They have a whole different workout regimen than the rest of the team because there's something that they saw that actually kind of worked last year that said, wait a minute, this DB group might be a little bit better. So yeah, we absolutely want to make sure that we can one up what we did last year because we know we can be that good. So when we come back, we got to talk about something else that you know is absolutely important to Kirby Smart, but to hear him actually speak on it, speak on dogs dominating, you love to hear it. And we'll talk about exactly what that means, the definition of it, and what Jarvis and I think it means when we go between the hedges on the other side. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party, the Dogs Edition, is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Now, LinkedIn isn't just another job board. You got to think about that when you're hiring for your small business and you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check them out. They have the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free because they have a vast network of over a billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And it does that all while making the process easy and intuitive. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And LinkedIn understands you're a small business, so you're wearing many hats and you might not have the time or the resources to hire. That's why they jump in and they even have a feature to help you build job descriptions. That's why 2.5 small businesses, 2.5 million to be exact, are using LinkedIn for hiring. So it's really easy. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free and find the most qualified candidates for your position. Terms and conditions apply. So, like you said earlier, Jarvis, Kirby's always been a sharpshooter and a straight shooter. He told ESPN recently, and this is another quote, "We've been relevant every year but that first one," meaning the first one of his reign. But I want more than relevance. I want dominance. And we've been more dominant in the last 3 years. Now, here's the perspective I want to kind of lay out, Jarvis. Other than a natty, what are some of the other elements that would make you feel like the Dogs were dominant? Be it going undefeated, number one offense, number one defense in the nation, another record number of players that at the end of the season we can see are definitely headed to the draft. What does that dominance look like for you outside of a natty?
Wow. I think one of the things that, and Kirby Smart might not, his ears might start bleeding once I start saying that. Individual awards. I think that if Carson Beck is able to somehow pull off the Heisman
Ooh,
Trophy,
yeah.
you're talking about really putting your name in the upper echelon of, that dominance that you seek, right? Because people understand Georgia is a hell of a program, right? From a recruiting standpoint, they got the back-to-back natties in 21 and 22. So obviously, you're good on that aspect
Yes,
of. And I
of
just think that,
dominance. Yep.
I just think that aspect of dominating the postseason awards, and because there's no reason why Georgia shouldn't have the award for the best offensive line. Like that's
Right.
ridiculous. That makes no sense whatsoever to me because we know the emphasis that Kirby puts on that when he's going out there and recruiting all across the country. But I think that if he's able to somehow start pushing, Carson Beck, to be that guy, not only just from a performance standpoint, but off the field as well,
Yes.
and then I think Georgia had run the ball last year by at a 52% clip, and we know how people like to sling it around the yard in college, right? So, when you think about maybe pushing that maybe to 49% or 50%, getting him to be able to pass the ball a little bit more because we understand how efficient he was, from a completion percentage and being able to finish in the red zone as well. So all those
Yeah.
kind of add up to, yeah, let's get some individual awards if you want to be dominant, Kirby. And tell Mike Bobo, hey, man, it's okay to kind of if you want to sling the ball on the yard, especially if you
Yep.
see something in that a crank in that defense that they can take advantage of.
Oh, yeah. I would have to say the same. And here's the thing. For me, I look at it like we know Georgia as RBU. They've
Right.
established that. this is a new term, but you might as well call it what it is, O-line U, because they're establishing that too on the offensive side of the ball. But it's not quite QBU yet, and it definitely isn't WR or wide receiver U quite yet. So I agree with you there. That may be a space or lane where this program can show further dominance, because we crank out what we know is the most important position on the field. We're cranking out Heisman Trophy candidates every year, Heisman Trophy finalists, if not Heisman Trophy winners. So I think that's an excellent point that you make. And it can start out by some of the buzz that we're hearing and the excitement with getting players like Dominic Lovett or getting the transfer tight end from Stanford, who can hopefully sort of expand and enhance your offense. But yeah, I think if you can start getting the individual accolades, especially on offense, then that would be good. Other than, of course, the Mackey Award, you got that hands down like that. That award, yeah,
they
exactly.
love
Like,
they love numbers, the offensive
yeah,
quarterback
right.
and all this stuff.
Yeah. So right. And it's become tight end you on some level as well. But yeah, when you start having a conversation about individual accolades as it relates to the quarterback from UGA, that's when you start to distinguish yourself, and you can see like a next level, we'll call it, of dominance. Now, you think about dominance in the DB room, right? And man, I mean, you can't get any better than what Georgia was able to, the productivity they were able to have, the success with Tyke Smith, the success with Javon Bullard. And Malaki Starks is a bad man too. But of course, he has been injured dealing with the shoulder injury, rehabbing that. He is expected to come back. But my question is this, Jarvis, because you always have to ask yourself, but what if that doesn't happen? Or what if he's not the same? Or what if it takes longer than expected for him to come back into the regular season? Does Georgia currently have the guns in that DB room to replace him, especially with Smith and Bullard moving on to the league, and with Starks, like I said, possibly being, not sure, you're being unsure of when he's returning?
To be honest with you, I'm not too concerned about Malaki Starks returning to this lineup. I feel like he'll be ready during the summertime. That's why he's getting that time to kind of get
Oh,
acclimated and go
yeah.
through the rehabilitation process. Excuse me, and because we understand that we're not worried about the performance. Right? If he's
No,
healthy,
yeah. If he's healthy, he's that guy. Yeah.
that's kind of what it is. He's gonna be the guy to be the leader of that group. And as far as replacing Javon and Tyke, I feel like there's a guy by the name of Ja'Cory Thomas who's expected to be the starter at that safety spot. I really feel like there's something about him. He was talking in his press conference. He was talking about how his mom has been giving him media training ever since he was a child.
Yes.
Because what he's not going to do is go out there and embarrass me in these interviews. And I was just like, oh my God, that is such a black mother.
You're not going to embarrass me in these streets, boy.
Right.
Son.
So yeah, he's been in the system, going into his third year. First time, potentially being a first-time starter. He's been cross-training at the star position, which he played in high school. So I feel like there's a lot of experience there, not necessarily from knowing how to play the star position at Georgia or knowing how to play the safety position at Georgia, but just from being in position to make plays from that spot. I feel like he has that experience, and I think to be able to apply that to him, and he even talked about how last year he started to really click for him and things start to slow down, because I understand what it's like from making that leap from high school to college.
Oh,
It can
yeah.
be everybody is not able to do it. I know people like,
No.
oh yeah, he's a 5-star kid, goes on to go to the NFL, but there's so many 5-star kids that didn't make it out of their freshman and sophomore years because they just couldn't pick up the defense or pick up the offense or whatever position they're playing. So I think for him to talk about how things started to slow down for him last year, and now he's starting to understand, and now he's standing at the podium and speaking on his teammates and talking about different guys and how they're doing in practice, that lets you know that a safety has to know what everyone is doing. Not pretty much.
Indeed.
They have to know what everyone is doing, where they're supposed to be. So for him to be already in that mindset right now in the spring and looking at guys and how they're doing and everything. He even talked about KJ Bolden as well.
Yeah.
Was another big time prospect. Hey, he kind of like, yeah, I understand. He's an athlete. He knows what he's going to be able to do. So when you have guys kind of speaking like that, I'm not necessarily concerned. Now, if he was over there stumbling, it's like, oh yeah, he's being very generic. and describing his teammates and describing things and not really talking about how he's able to grasp the defense, then I'd be concerned. But I think Ja'Cory Thomas is going to be a guy who's going to be able to fill in well at that spot. And Jonell Aguero is another guy that's up for that star spot too. So I think they Kirby understands what he knows what he's got going on. So yeah, I'm not too concerned about Starks not being out there. That's just mean more reps for those guys that are trying to vie for those positions.
Exactly. And then you talk about the Alabama transfer as well, Jake Pope. So it's one of those where we go with the embarrassment of riches, but that's what it's supposed to be. Like, yeah, you can't always replace one for one with a guy like Malaki Starks. And hopefully you won't even have to, because hopefully he comes back 100% and he is still that guy. But it's also good to know, especially if you start him slowly, I don't want to say minutes restrictions like we say in basketball, but kind of like minutes restrictions. At least you know that you have guys in the stable who could definitely match some of that energy that you get from Starks. Now stick around, because we're going to talk about some dogs on the hardwood that might be getting it done. We'll tell you about it in Next Up. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That is what this dogs program is all about. You know that they're going to show all of it starting next week for G-Day, but it's also a formula for winning championships like we've seen them do 2 of the last 3 years, and it's what keeps your ride or die alive. So eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and of course, the really funky, tricked out faux leather covers for your seats. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay's got you covered. Over 122 million parts for your ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or die every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. And of course, eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So Jarvis, we got more information today coming out of Kirby Smart's last presser before G-Day. And one of the things that he talked about was the growth that he's seen in Gunner Stockton. And he said he's playing with, quote, much more consistency. Now, granted, I do want to give the caveat that Ryan Puglisi is dealing with a little bit of a knee injury. Kirby mentioned that as well. It's something that he's dealt with since high school, Kirby Smart said, but hopefully he gets back today. But what kind of still jumped off the page for me was the fact that he said he could see Gunner Stockton's growth. He's playing with much more consistency. So I said, does that kind of give us some intel? Because, of course, we spent a lot of the offseason talking about QB1 in Carson Beck, but we know that in the blink of an eye, QB2 could be or have a need to be QB1. What does this kind of give you, or what intel does it give you about the possibility of who is going to be that guy behind the guy in Carson Beck?
I mean, I think this is great for Gunner Stockton. When you think about what quarterbacks need to do at Georgia, because the quarterback situation is Georgia is not something that we're used to seeing in today's transfer portal stuff. Like, you got guys out here waiting 2-3 years to go ahead and play, and then coming back for another year in Carson Beck, and then because when you think about how that works and how people understand that, and I think Gunner Stockton seeing Carson Beck, putting in the work and not being able to get that starting spot behind, and have to sit behind Stetson Bennett, rightfully so, winning back-to-back national championships. So it just kind of shows you that what Kirby Smart's values. He values you getting better. He doesn't value, hey man, I need to be playing. He don't value that talk. He wants to see some production. He wants to see that growth, and for you to be able to not only be QB2 this year, but we know Carson Beck is he ain't gonna be around next year. You know, this is like, you got to think,
this
not
is your
only
dress rehearsal.
Yeah, this is your dress rehearsal. You got to think big picture when it comes to that. If I'm Gunner Stockton, because we know that position is probably going to be wide open more than likely. And if you are steady, being consistent, and showing that growth that Kirby Smart is looking for on a daily basis, especially in the spring, because we know you're not getting real reps, so to speak. As far as like getting hit and all that stuff, and you're not going to be able to get those, because if unless Carson Beck gets knocked out of the game or something like that.
Yeah.
This is your time to shine, and I think that
Mhm.
he's taking full advantage of that.
Yeah, and I think you have to because like you said, we all know the story of Stetson Bennett the fourth. Like if there's no other story, that's exhibit A, B, C, and D
The
for a
lore.
guy who exactly like I mean,
More the
if you
lore.
don't, yeah, it was crazy
Right.
what we saw in his descent, mostly descent until he just ascended and like then it was through the roof. And
Right.
that's all it kind of takes is sometimes being ready and patient for when your number is called. And like you said, this is a little bit of an anomaly because you do not see that in college football, especially at the QB position where everybody is trying to put on display that they belong in the QB1 spot and they should be the guy that's going to be able to play himself into an opportunity for the NFL. That's everybody's goal.
Yeah, that's
So
it. Yeah.
to see these guys sit behind someone to know, hey, you might only have 1 year to be able to do it. But in the interim, while you're waiting for that 1 year, you need to show up. And as we say in church, show out because you really never know at what given moment you're going to have that opportunity to maybe show who you can be. And we've seen souls snatched and jobs taken for guys who are ready.
And to be honest with you, that's what coach wants. Like, they're not gonna
Yeah,
really come out and say it. Coaches,
right.
like the coaches of these Power 5, these big boy programs, like the upper
Mm-hmm.
echelon, they
Yeah.
want that. They want that competition. They
Oh, yeah.
want guys to be out here concerned about their jobs because, hey, man, that means you got to come out and ball every day. You can't
Yeah.
you wrestle on your laurels, as my accounting teacher, my marketing teacher back at Albany State used to say. You can't be wrestling on your laurels, Mr. Davis. That's what coaches are saying every day. They want to be able to say
Right.
that each and every day. Rest on your
Mm-hmm.
laurels you want to. Puglisi, hey man, injuries happen, but Gunner Stockton is taking full advantage of that.
Yeah, indeed. And speaking of taking advantage, it really depends on how you look at it. I'm going to be interested to see what your answer is because we had this conversation with a couple of my colleagues at another gig.
Mhm.
And the question was this. Of course, we know that UGA basketball, it was on a high. I think UGA's teams won like 11 games in a row to start the season. And all of a sudden they did like this just swoon. And then they kind of came up for air and won a few critical games before the regular season wrap. Well, turns out they get the invitation to the NIT. They accept it, and now they are in the Final Four. They are going to be playing to get to the championship game, taking on Seton Hall tonight. And I don't know about you, Jarvis, but I think it's kind of exciting because I still say that low-key basketball in the state of Georgia in general is very underrated. And many of these guys on this roster hail right here from Georgia. So I think it's a good look. I'm excited.
Yeah, when you think about, like you said, coming in the season with expectations, obviously Mike White was brought in for a purpose, right? To get to the
Right.
big boy tournament. But
Yes.
unfortunately, that didn't happen this year for whatever reason. And I think that White wanted to be able to get his guys out there because he got guys that he promised that they were going to
Yes.
do with those expectations. Transfer guys coming in with only one year eligibility left. So those
Mm-hmm.
and having those conversations with those guys, like the more they can play basketball, the better. Because whatever they want to go on to do, maybe they want to go play overseas or have an opportunity to play in the NBA. Because we know more eyeballs are on these postseason tournaments. So more so obviously in the NCAA tournament, but like
Mm-hmm.
there are eyeballs on this NIT tournament. So for
Yeah.
them to be in it right now, going against Seton Hall, it's gonna be something to watch. And I feel
Yeah.
like if they're able to get past Seton Hall and get into this championship and win it, like
Mm-hmm.
that's something that you gotta give kudos to because
You do.
to go from these swoons like you talk about to go up and down like the stock market during the season
Mm-hmm.
to be able to finish on a serious high note, it's gonna work out well for you because guess
Yeah.
what's going on right now? The transfer portal in basketball is open,
Wide
wide
open.
open, and they are trying to recruit. He like, hey man, look at what we just did. So come on down here
Yeah.
so we can get in the big boy tournament and be playing around this time of year next year.
Yeah, and so many of those guys have had some really solid seasons. Like Noah Thomason is probably their most consistent
Yes.
player, and Silas Demery Jr. has been consistent for him as well. And I think that you want to see, and even Justin Hill. I mean, I think he's had a couple buzzer beaters. You want to give those guys an opportunity to shine for the work that they put in. So I'm in agreement. Like, hey, let them play. I'm glad they accepted the invitation. Now they are 2 wins away from potentially being national champions. And here's where the caveat came in, which was the funniest debate ever. Would you hang the banner if they win?
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
what I
Come
said.
on, like, what are we talking about
A
here?
win is a win.
A win is a win. A championship is a championship. It might not be the one that everybody strives to get, but hey,
Right.
this is what we call a stepping stone because Georgia
Yes.
hasn't been playing this late for a very, very long time. So
Right.
for him to be able to get this team in the tournament, accept the invitation, saying, "Hey, we're gonna go out here and try to win this doggone thing," if they're able to do that, you set a goal and you achieve it. Yes, you doggone commemorate that bad boy. Y'all
Yeah,
crazy.
because that's what I said too. I was like, what do you mean you don't hang the banner? You hang the you get a banner, you hang a banner. Period. Because trust and believe, if Anthony Edwards would have had a chance or Kentavious Caldwell Pope would have had a chance to hang an NIT banner, they would have hung the banner. So giving these guys the opportunity, I wish
Wear that
them well.
ring
And
too, hot dog.
exactly. Yeah, get a ring. Exactly. Wear your ring with pride. And I hope we are on the Atlanta football party. I hope we can make it a basketball party next week and we have a chance to congratulate the Dogs for what they do on the hardwood. Appreciate you stopping by for the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk and a little hoops talk as well. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, we're free and available wherever you download your podcast. We'll see you on Thursday for the Atlanta Sports Party.